You have people running academies who shouldn't be. You have some great academy directors and instructors don't have the resources. You have there's just so many. You have people who think it's 1983 still.
You are a warrior.
321 status.
What kind of vehicle is it?
You are the very best your nation has to offer.
911.
Multiple shots fired.
They're asking you to lead.
5. We need a Bearcat.
It's up to us.
So 133. I need somebody that's got a visual on where the shooter is.
You must be sound in mind, body, and spirit.
42, where's the officer down? I have a rescue helicopter that wants to land and help.
This is the podcast that will make you the one.
Copy, running eastbound.
The one that will bring everyone back.
I believe we have shots fired. Give me backup now.
Because no one else is coming.
We're going to have an officer shot. 100 block of East Street.
Suspect is down.
This is The Squad Room.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Squad Room Podcast, where we learn how to serve, strive, and succeed in our challenging career. My name is Garrett Tesla, and I'm an active duty sergeant for a sheriff's office in Southern California, and I am on a mission to build a world where first responders wake up inspired, feel confident at work, and go home safe knowing they've spent their time in a worthy cause. We have a great episode today, but first I want to remind you that you can support the show and rock some cool gear by visiting our apparel line at aworthycauselife.com. Or check us out on Instagram at aworthycauselife. And there's a couple ways you can stay connected with the podcast and make sure that you're getting as much value out of these episodes as possible. First off, like our Facebook page and join our Facebook group of active and aspiring law enforcement professionals. Just search the Squad Room group on Facebook to join. And of course, also we're on Instagram at the Squad Room, where in 2021, I am putting out more content on a regular basis, including Instagram TV and Instagram videos, and the kind of things that I think can help you, again, serve, strive, and succeed in our career. We have a great episode today. One fantastic guy, Dennis Benino, CEO of Street Cop Training, is with us to talk about his path from active and proactive law enforcement officer, started his career in corrections and moved to the federal agency and then to a municipal agency on the East Coast, to eventually launching what is almost certainly the biggest privately held cop training program out there in the country right now, and that's Street Cop Training. And Dennis walks us through his whole career, and we get real deep on the stuff that he's learned in his career, how he's gotten to where he's gotten, how he uses mentors that he's never met before to help him achieve his goals. And he does a great job of walking us through how he has succeeded to this point. So we've titled this episode What I've Learned, because we will be doing more and more of these episodes with either active or retired law enforcement officers, walking us through the successful things that they've done, some of the mistakes they've made, some of the things they would change in hopes that it can help you, again, serve, strive, succeed in your own career. So stay with us for this interview with Dennis Benino of Street Cop Training. You know, when we think about the equipment we carry with us on our person, we often assume that it's our sidearm that's most important. But I disagree. Sure, it's important, but think about how important your radio is and how often you use it. Statistically, you're likely to go your entire career without firing your sidearm in the performance of your duties. However, you won't go more than a few minutes in patrol before you use your radio. It is your lifeline to the outside world, and it's how you call for help, set up a perimeter, request an ambulance, or maybe even a supervisor. And think about it. If you do end up using your sidearm on duty, it's very likely that the next thing you'll use is your radio to tell dispatch shots fired. Our radios are incredibly important to our jobs and to help keep us and our partners safe. And it's important to make sure that you're using quality equipment. We can't control the quality of the radio that we're often issued, but we can control some of the accessories we use that make us safer. I'm proud that CommGear Supply is the sponsor of this episode. Head over to commgearsupply.com and you will see their massive inventory of microphones, earpieces, speakers, batteries, headsets, push-to-talk sets, and everything else you need to help you stay in comms and stay safe. Their customer service team will help you make sure you get it right and get the right accessories that are compatible with your equipment. Now, here's the coolest part of CommGear Supply. And it's why I'm so proud to work with them. They have a line of duty protection warranty on many of their products. If your gear ever breaks in the line of duty, they'll replace it for you. And prices are tax-free, and it's always free shipping on orders inside the US and even to some parts of Canada. Go to comgearsupply.com right now and use the coupon code TheSquadRoom to get 10% off your order. Make sure you also follow them on Instagram at ComGearSupply and let them know you appreciate their support of our show. This episode is also sponsored by OfficerPrivacy.com. In the age of the internet, social media, and smartphones, there's so much amazing information at our fingertips. I can research any topic or person I want and learn all about them, their family, and way more information than I really should be able to. The problem is people can do research on us, too. Whether we like it or not, our information is on the internet, out there for people to find. Just accepting this and doing nothing isn't an option, though. We as cops have a giant target on our backs these days, literally sometimes. And it's life or death, and at other times, it's just a matter of dealing with potential harassment. Either way, we don't want to expose our families to these risks. Being careful about what you post on social media doesn't go far enough. It's easy for a bad guy with an iPhone and free Wi-Fi to hunt you down. That's why OfficerPrivacy.com exists. My friend Pete James is the founder, and he spent 25 years in law enforcement here in California, using much of his career to hunt down criminals and evidence on computers and on the internet. Pete knows how easy it is to find you, and since he's one of the good guys, he can help. OfficerPrivacy.com offers 2 packages to choose from to help you clean up the internet. Their premium service allows you to sit back and let the professionals do the work, where they will work to scrub the internet's top 30 people search sites that can expose your home address. They then work to maintain your privacy by monitoring those same sites. If you show up again, they'll remove you again. They also offer an at-home solution for those of you that have the time and technical ability to do it yourself. Using their proprietary software, you can remove yourself and your family members from these same top 30 people search sites on the internet, and then use that software to conduct audits as often as you like and to make sure you haven't been added back. Check out Pete's work at OfficerPrivacy.com and take the first step to protecting you and your family and your home. Dennis Benino of Street Cop Training, welcome to the Squad Room. Dennis, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I gave you a heads up right before we started recording on this that, I think a lot of people are aware of who you are and what you do now, probably more on the East Coast of the United States than the West Coast. But I don't want to spend this interview talking about where you are now. I'm more curious about what got you there. So give me, for the listeners who may be outside the U.S. or maybe on the West Coast who aren't as familiar with Street Cop Training, give us the little synopsis of what your company is doing right now.
Street Cop Training is a police training company. I don't really spend any time discussing other police training companies. We just focus on what we offer and what we do. And in a nutshell, I believe that we are providing, kind of the company slogan is we're providing the training that police officers deserve. We've been shortchanged quite a bit in the training that's been offered to us. And at this point now, it's really a potpourri of different topics with an interdiction feel to it underlying, but really bringing to the forefront the things that everybody should have been taught in the beginning of their career and throughout their career that have been pushed to the wayside and essentially have caused us some of the dilemma that we're facing today in law enforcement. So we're trying to really pick up the slack there and, make sure people are getting the things they need to be able to function as a police officer in modern day police work and still be effective.
Yeah. When I first started following you or learning about you and what you were doing, one of my first thoughts, and you've probably heard this from people before, isn't some of this stuff just common knowledge? Isn't this what everyone's taught? And I realize it's not, of course, right? It is something that's lacking in a lot of academies. And first thought was that it made me so thankful that I had good field training officers and a good FTO program that taught me a lot of the basic criminal interdiction things that now people have to go out and seek on their own. So is it just that these things aren't taught, that people don't care about them, that people don't know about them to pass them on? What is the biggest challenge that you're seeing in terms of teaching cops how to go out and do the job in an effective way?
I think that one, a lack of perspective that it existed this way. That's probably one of the reasons. Two, a lack of knowledge of how to do things this way.
Mm,
Um, Three, a insecurity to admit that this is better style police work and we don't know what we're doing or talking about. Four, um, that's probably a big one, is the lack of humility to say we need this. We can't provide it, but we know it's important.
mm,
Uh, there's probably and I'm not going to continue to list them by number, but uh, a lack of caring, right? We know that often at times basic police academies are just that. They're checking boxes that are basic, and
right.
it's unfortunate, right? It's not a. They're checking boxes to meet the status quo, but we're not going above and beyond. And there's a lot of reasons for it, a lot of theories behind it. And rather than to pontificate all day of what those reasons are, we're doing our best to try to change that. And listen, I've had people who run academies that are like, I don't have the resources, I don't have the personnel to give these guys and girls, and I have a job, and that's my job, is to get them through an academy, and I don't have the resources to provide them the training they actually deserve and need.
Mhm.
Um, so there's a lot of thoughts. I mean, you can go really into big thoughts of why these things don't exist. I mean, you know, you have people running academies who shouldn't be. You have some great academy directors and instructors don't have the resources. You have there's just so many. You have people who think it's 1983 still. We made a joke the other day. We were having a conversation. One of our instructors said, when I left my academy, I knew how to shine boots like they look like glass, but I didn't know what to do when a car smelled like marijuana. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
these are big issues. These are big issues that we face, and um, to open your mouth and address some of these things, sacrificing, putting my neck on the line, which I will continuously do, to hope for change and try to push for it, to give these guys and girls, I don't know, dude, even the ability to stay alive. Like,
Mhm.
okay, you don't want to give them anything else. Like, why don't we teach tactics that keep them alive? You know,
Right.
how many police academies are still teaching driver's side approach? You know what I mean, dude? Like, and
Mhm.
people will say, "Oh, well, driver's side approach, blah blah blah." People start getting defensive without even hearing why or why we're explaining it, and insecurity just comes out, and then it's just something's got to give. And fortunately enough, a lot of the old school baby boomers are on their way out. The Gen Xers are coming up, the millennials, and they're bringing a new thought to how the job is done.
Absolutely.
Did I answer the
Eh,
question? Because I sometimes I just rant and rave.
no, you absolutely answered it, and since learning about your presence showed me a gap in my own knowledge, realizing, oh, there's a lot of good cops who want to go out and do hard work who just don't know where to start. And it was just this week, even where something, I don't know if you said it or if it was one of your Facebook groups or your Instagram page or someone, and I don't even know if it was an instructor or a student who said, uh, something as simple as understanding that you find the car you want to stop and then you find the reason to stop it, rather than just sitting there running radar all day.
Right.
And, I've never once in my life ran radar, but I've had some really great car stops. And it's from that perspective. And to understand now for me, realizing, oh, there's a gap. There's people that don't get this, that this is not intuitive. This is not taught. The role that you're filling there, in teaching these guys, and then in seeing the response you get from people, right? That must be very heartwarming and very encouraging when you get guys and girls who are emailing you or posting on Facebook about, look at the seizure and the guns that they're pulling out of cars after coming to your classes to learn about criminal interdictions type stuff. That must feel amazing.
You know, it does, and it offsets the other side of the things that I have to deal with as somebody who is outspoken, has a lot of attention, and the attention continues to grow. And with that comes negativity as well. So, I tell
Sure.
people all the time, "Oh, our chief doesn't want us going to your training," and I'm like, that's for every one time I hear that, I got 600 chiefs who think it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to law enforcement. And my response now is, in the past 5 months, I've been told that 3 police officers decided not to take their own lives because of something I said or did, or restoring faith in what they were doing as a profession. So I don't care what your chief says. And I'm going to backtrack
Right.
just a tad. You know, some people had no training. A guy like myself, if I had only gone to one academy because I went to 3, my 3rd academy provided literally zero, nothing. And then my
Mm.
field training provided zero and nothing. And then nobody I worked with provided zero, nothing, or help because they didn't care or they didn't know how. And you know what, dude? I ran radar because that's what I thought was. Nobody just even told me, hey, what are you doing? Like, there's like, I know you're trying to be this guy. This is not the way we do that to get to where you're trying to meet your goals. So
Right.
sometimes even the conversation of, hey, look at this. Whoa, what is that? Yeah, this is police work. And dude, when you say that to somebody with 19 or 21 or 27 years on the job and they've hung their great career and hat on their ability to write a book of tickets a shift, it hurts, man. It hurts their feelings.
Sure.
And there's only 2 reactions to that is, wow, I wish I would have known that when I started. I may start doing that now, or I'm at least going to make sure the guys behind me know what that is. Or it's a big, yeah, okay. And then you get the responses like this. I can show you that parking a car at this intersection and enforcing traffic laws uh, has shown a reduction of 18% in traffic crashes. Like people who were just hiding behind the BS excuses. When the
Right.
reality is, it wasn't the traffic ticket that slowed people down and reduced the crashes. One, it's probably a little game of luck and serendipity. But 2, it's the presence of a police cruiser. That had not, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? People don't know if you're out there looking to interfere with people committing criminal acts or you're looking to bother Jim who's on his way to work at 8:57 and is 12 over. So they don't
Right.
know which guy you are, and inherently if you're speeding, you're going to have a reaction and slow down. So,
Yeah. So, and you mentioned this, you just touched on it. You went through 3 academies. So you started in corrections, then you moved to the U.S. Park Police as a
yeah,
federal law enforcement officer, and then you moved to a municipality in New Jersey. Where did you grow up?
I'm a Jersey boy. I'm through and through. I'm as Jersey as it comes, Garrett. Yeah.
The only Jersey I have in me is a summer when I lived in Teaneck, interning inside New York City, inside of the music industry, and I lived in Teaneck, New Jersey, for a summer. That's the only New Jersey I got in me. So, what was the environment that you went into when you started in policing in New Jersey? Was this your hometown, or was this in that area?
Yeah, yeah. So it was my hometown. You know, I was very young when I got hired. So with that came my mistakes as a very young patrolman, as a very young person in law enforcement. I was 19 when I got sworn in. And I probably didn't have the mentorship that I should have had at that age to kind of guide me on some smarter decisions, maybe professionally and personally as well. Not that I did anything egregious, but looking back now, people will say, hey, I started my career, I was 32 when I started, and right away I'm fast tracked to detective. I'm like, yeah, because you're bringing wisdom. Being 32 versus being 19 are 2 different worlds. And that's not
Yes.
something you can take a class on. You could have a mentor, but there's a lot to be said about who I am now at almost 40 to who I was at 19 when I started my career. There's no question about it. And that's just time in the field. And now I'm trying to help mentor younger patrol officers, younger law enforcement officers, both male and female, on, hey, don't do this. Hey, do this, right? Like, you don't have to do that. You can do this. So there's this big, like, lack of, well, I don't want to say lack of. Maybe there's an open space for a lot of folks who need a little perspective on things, and we're trying to really give that to them. We're trying to be the big brother who takes them under their wing at the police department to make sure that they have a successful career and they know what they need to know to be safe and be smart and act and behave properly.
19. I mean, you're literally still a teenager at that point when you're coming on the job. What was it um, that you remember most about that time in your life? And was this something that you knew you were going to do and always going to do, or was this something you sort of, as many of us do, like I did, fell into it sort of backwards?
I knew I wanted to be a cop. through and through. It was gleaming out of me. I couldn't get there fast enough. I also knew, as crazy as it sounds, that I was very entrepreneurial and a very hard worker,
Hmm.
which is crazy because if you look at what I did and how my life kind of mapped out later on to look back on it, you're seeing a lot of that stuff being brought back to light now later on in my adult life. But at that time,
Sure.
all I wanted to do was be a cop, because it's a very interesting thing, and I think that's where I found myself most attracted to it. The excitement of it. Um, at 19, I could tell you that police academies in New Jersey are inherently difficult. Majority of them are. They're not easy. They're not like many or a far majority of the country's police academies that are what I consider to be not difficult. Now, some programs do. Like, don't get me wrong, there are some very very tough programs outside of the state of New Jersey. I've seen them. Usually, it's state police academies. You know, nationally,
Mhm.
they always try to hold their standard in higher regard. That's just their program itself. It doesn't mean it's any more efficient than the other one, but they're hard. And I remember it being so cold that winter, and I remember getting up and having to be out of my house about 4 o'clock in the morning, and my friends coming back from parties at college. Well, I had a shaved head freezing my ass off, loading a 60-pound bag into the back of a truck and heading off for an hour and a half drive to go get killed for the next 10 hours. So, I mean, there were things I knew what I was doing, and people would say to me back then, "It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. You're going to be thankful when you're older." And I had faith in it. Probably the advice I was getting from people who were offering me the advice was almost useless, but that actually made some sense.
Hmm. You touched on you started to answer a question I was going to ask about the entrepreneurial spirit. What were you doing as a teenager that was entrepreneurial like that you later brought back, or was it just always an interest of yours?
It's crazy, Garrett. I began to see things very differently than other people saw things, even at a very young age. And although I wasn't vocal about it, didn't act on it because we didn't have the internet, it wasn't a cool thing back then to be an entrepreneur, right? Um,
Right.
I was very much always interested in working. Begged my father to let me work my first job at 13. I was shoveling snow like a madman. I had 8 to 10 neighborhood kids working with me. Uh, I would do anything for a buck, and I don't mean that dishonestly, but I would, flipping candy, flipping bubble gum, always eager to make money anytime, any chance that I could. And money wasn't the driver. I was just a very motivated young man. And I had a job pretty much through and through from the time I was 13 till now. As a matter of fact, when I graduated high school, I was working 2 full-time jobs because it made me feel normal. I like to be busy. So you can imagine as a cop, when I would come on the road, when I understood where to channel my energy, I just was on it all the time. And one of the
It
hardest
had to
things,
go somewhere.
yeah, I mean, I'd have to try to exercise patience to get greater results. So that's a hard thing for somebody who's always on the go to do. I mean, if you would watch how we do things here at Street Cop Training, currently right now we have 12 full-time employees. That doesn't count instructors. It's like I'm like an orchestrator. Does that make sense? That orchestrator? Yeah,
Oh,
that's right, right?
yeah,
And
like a
so it's all
conductor.
day. I come in here and just right, or just this, that, do that, do this, no, change that, call this guy, do that, change this, and it's all day. And now here it is, 5 o'clock Eastern time, and I'm like, where did the day go? Every day, where did the day go?
Right. Right.
But
Right.
we are having good impact, and we're making great progression. And I'm proud to say that this company is built on really good morals and principles and proper behavior and humility. So I don't want anybody to take this conversation I'm having and kind of misinterpret what I'm saying here. I have a lot of humility, and I'm very thankful to have been chosen by God to be in this position because I think that we're the right people for it.
It's funny you mentioned the like selling bubble gum at 13, and it was at that exact age that I ran around my junior high and then senior high with my buddy Jeff Johnson, and we had fanny packs, and we were rocking and selling bubble gum and cinnamon toothpicks, and like little dental floss cleaners. We would sell those in between classes
Well,
at the age of 13. So I feel that connection to the entrepreneurial idea very, very clearly. Um, you know, humility, that's something that you just mentioned. Oftentimes it takes something to put us in check, to give us a little humility, to remind us that there's other things or other factors or other people out there. Have you had a situation that you can think of where maybe you did get a little bit ahead of yourself and humility put you in your place a bit?
I think everybody is going to experience humility, but I can tell you that the paradigm shift in my life began when I started getting more perspective from people that I found to be acting more attractive. So when I discovered audiobooks and then followed by podcasts, and I'm listening to these people who were extremely successful, I liked what I heard. I liked the way they were behaving. I liked the way they acted towards other people. And it was a perspective from a blue collar kid that I'd never heard before. So I was very much attracted to it. So I don't think it was any quote unquote circumstance. I mean, I think everybody has moments in their life that they're not super proud of. I don't think you're a human if you don't. I don't know if there's any, I don't believe there's one moment that changed the dynamic of who I am, but I think there was a paradigm shift when I consciously told myself I'm going to be somebody different. And if I'm going to be this person that I think I'm going to be, I wasn't changing who I was. I was actually learning how to find the best qualities and overemphasize those and realize what provoked any kind of bad qualities that I had. And that's not just personality wise. I mean, I'm talking about behavior towards my health, consumption of alcohol. A lot of that stuff I parted ways with and made peace with. And mental, I mean, I meditate twice a day. I just gain a lot of new perspective on what becomes more important and what my mission in life is versus, kind of floating along and just behaving the same way that was acceptable for everybody else to behave because it was your environment. You know what I mean? And just looking back and trying to be uh, more self improved and offering more to the world. There are a lot of moments in my life that I think have shaped who I've become now. And I'm trying to take that perspective and really help police officers and anybody in that sense kind of see things a little differently. Try to get them out of that environment that we know that can become very negative, and it's hard to get away from that. And you just have to find yourself to get away from that
Mhm.
negative stuff.
So we could spend almost the whole hour on just that alone, with this idea of deciding to be somebody different. And I originally, when you just said that, I originally thought you meant you were going to be different than other people. You're going to set yourself apart and walk your own path. But I realized quickly that you're talking about making a shift within yourself and deciding to go be different. When was that decision made? Was it while you were still an active officer, or was it once you decided you wanted to start street cop training, or when you went full time?
I think when as I matured and began to see things a little differently. Like I said, I think there's many milestones in my life that we could spend an hour on me. Hey, at this moment, I had this, but I think that really when it occurred is when I started. And I'll be honest with you, I had a friend of mine. We were just texting before, um, who who was extremely successful, and he's one of the largest realtors. Actually, I think he just won today the number one real estate team in Remax in the world. He's a guy here. If you drove in the New Jersey Turnpike, you would see his signs everywhere. Almost every sign in New Jersey, he has purchased. And I started seeing how they were behaving, how they're using their energy, and started picking his brain about where you guys coming up with this stuff. We're at the same town where I'm from, right? And getting some perspective, or at least I just need the window cracked a little bit to say, this is far more attractive to me. This might be even more of an appropriate fit for who I am than what I was or what I thought I was. So, and then I think once you start getting to that place where you're finding, you're doing some soul searching, you realize that you have all this knowledge, you've gained all this humility, you begin to attract people around you that are similar minded. Some people
Mhm.
fall to the wayside, unfortunately. Some negative people I had to write out of my life. Nothing I can do about that. but with the mentorship of people who are living what I consider to be a more fruitful, honorable, um, and enriched life.
Hmm.
You know, and I think a lot of good things came along with that, and it probably helped prepare me for the adversity that I would face on this journey. A friend of mine who is a cop in New Jersey, I had run into some issues in the beginning when I started teaching this stuff from a police. I don't want to say leader because they're far from it. Somebody who was a police administrator
Hmm.
who ran interference for me as hard as he could because he never heard what police work was, and this concept of me employing the case law to achieve law enforcement objectives and actually following what the law wants you to do was so far in that this man pulled his uh, as many strings he could politically to try to run interference, and it did. And a friend of mine, Frank, said to me, I'll never forget it. And it was the beginning of this whole police career of being an educator. That all great people will face adversity. It just depends on what time in your life it will occur. He goes, but don't kid yourself. You are doing great things. It's just one of those times. And
Hmm.
thank God he said it to me because it meant the world that he said it, but it also made me take a look at myself as well. And I think him preparing me for that, those words reminded me of what my journey was. And now, now the writing's on the wall. It's clear as day why it's been so important and why I put up with the days that you must pay the emotional piper because it ain't a free ride. And I tell guys that all the time. I say, look, it's wonderful that 15 or 20 you want to line up after class and take selfies. But this morning I was dealing with a complete massive headache. Not physically, but that comes with the territory of somebody trying to do something to harm or interfere with what we're trying to do for the world.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Part of your journey, it was in 2015, I think, that you had to medically retire from the full-time job
yes.
from an injury that occurred in 2014. And I imagine any cop who is as enthusiastic about the job as you were, and you're gaining the knowledge and you're being productive and you're being effective at the job, that must have been a sizable shift, one of those pivot moments in your life. And you'd mentioned Remax and your friend in Remax. I think you even tried real estate at some point before Street Cop was full time. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'll give you the history on that a little bit, without going into too many details because it's
Sure.
some of them are irrelevant, some of them are very relevant. I began police instruction in 2012, and again, head in the clouds, right? Really not taking it super seriously, but knew I had this thing to offer because I was field training. The people that I was field training were coming out far more knowledgeable than some of my counterparts were offering in their field training personal, their program, their twist on it. In 2014, that interference that I just talked about before had created a situation where the powers that be, the ones that at least controlled me, had removed my ability to go out and perform what I was performing as an instructor. And I had begged and pleaded and brought in, even at that time, only teaching for a year or two, 2 years at that time, the results that were coming out of this training program. And it fell on deaf ears. And I went home and I said to my wife, she goes, well, what are we going to do now? As a matter of fact, I even owned a barbershop at that time and I had taken a risk and put a lot of debt on my plate because I had this vision of this barbershop as well. Because I was very entrepreneurial and I was very excited about a lot of stuff. And I was able to manage the finances with the revenue from the police instruction, which was, seemingly pennies now compared to what it is. And my wife said to me at the time, well, what are we going to do now that you can't provide revenue from this training company? And I said, well, I have two choices, Court. I can lay on the floor here, stare at the ceiling, and feel bad for myself and bitch and moan and complain and cry. Or I have a friend from high school who I see on Facebook. Seems like he's doing pretty good in real estate. So I'm going to start by calling him first. And it was a matter of picking up that phone and saying, hey, what do you got going on? Gave me some things. I kind of didn't know anything about it, but told me he was making an astronomical amount of money. And for that moment, seemed would be a great solution to resolve a lot of my problems because it was financial problems at the moment. Um, and, picked my butt up, went to real estate school, and believe it or not, got very successful in real estate very quickly. I don't know exactly how many awards I was winning, but I could tell you that people call it. I think my first my first year was a half a year. I think the following year I did pretty good, but the following year after that, I had now become an award-winning realtor, and the year after that, which kind of actually ended up being my last year in real estate, oddly enough, I made another 2 tiers in real estate, and people were like, "What? How are you doing this?" At that time is when I came into the junction of my life where I had to make a decision on, was I going to continue in real estate, or was I going to choose to be a police trainer, because both were doing very well. And I had to do some soul searching, and I had to consult. As a matter of fact, I was able to have a sit down and some time, which I share on my personal Facebook, with Gary Vaynerchuk. And
Oh,
he
wow.
was the first person to give me the advice that I think you should do the police thing 100%. And I was like, yeah, I understand, but this was life changing. This real estate thing, I've been able to provide for my family. I have 3 kids at the time. We have been able to, move into a house that we never imagined we would own so quickly, and this, that, and the other thing. And I never forget leaving that night, and a friend of mine who was with me for that event said, "So what are you going to do?" I said, "It's a hard decision to make, 30 minutes later." But within the next 2 months, the world was speaking to me, and I had began to start letting the real estate thing drift away, disassemble my real estate portion of my portfolio, and then began to refocus on street cop training 100%. And my wife had said to me, "So what does this mean for us?" And I said, "Well, listen, we've been down this road before, right? 1 step back, 3 steps forward." So she goes, "Well, how long is that going to feel that way?" And I said, I'm going to say 18 months is my guess, but I'm going to try to make it up quicker than that. And I was able to actually catch up to where I was in real estate in 9 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so I made up that space. But dude, you're not going to see pictures and videos of me drinking White Claw sitting on a cooler in my driveway anytime from now in the past 6 years. This is
Right.
obsessive behavior with knowing that I have to provide the world. The world needs more of us, and I know that even 10 extra minutes might make the difference between life and death for somebody at this point. And I also have to balance that with being a father and a husband, and it is my full-on intention to be the best of that I can, and I keep that very much in my mind at the forefront. But I also bear in mind that there's a cop who might need to hear a tactic that would save his life from being taken from a traffic stop or an approach, or there's an instructor out there that can help bring a prosecution to somebody who deserves to be in jail and will be no more victims. So I don't want to take up that much time more time explaining it, but
Right.
that's kind of a little bit of the story. Back to just when I got injured, the doctor at the time had no idea that the words of "you're not going back to work," it doesn't look that way. I'll never forget that moment of my heart pounding, and I just didn't know what to think, because you get just natural reaction, right? I'm human like everybody else. Oh my God. And then beginning to realize that it wasn't an option of mine. I didn't have a choice. This is the route I was being sent down, and beginning to understand that, okay, I was effective as one cop, but I become really effective as like 100,000 cops. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's kind of the thing that I began to understand rather quickly, and accepted my circumstances. And I'm very much, obviously, still involved in the law enforcement community as this thing grows, whatever you want to call it, an influencer, a thought leader. And it's extremely rewarding. And who knew it was going to be me? I had no idea.
Hey, everyone. I want to take a quick moment to remind you that this episode is sponsored by Com Gear Supply. Com Gear Supply is a leading provider of public safety radios and radio accessories. They have some of the absolute best prices around, and their line of duty warranty can't be beat. That's right. On many of their products, if your gear breaks while in the performance of your duties, they'll replace it for you for free. Do you have any idea how many radio headsets I've broken over the years and that I've spent my own money on? Probably close to one every year on patrol. Your radio is important, but accessories you can use mean the difference between a stealthy approach and announcing your presence a block away. We all know the old timer who never wears an earpiece and blows our cover creeping up on a suspect. Don't be that guy. Make sure the gear you're using is high quality and meant to keep you safe in a dangerous career. Learn more about CommGear Supply and their line of duty warranty at commgearsupply.com. And don't forget, their orders are tax-free and it's also free shipping. They work with individual officers and large departments, so they can meet any need out there. Seriously, their inventory is mind-boggling. Check out commgearsupply.com and make sure they know you appreciate their support of the show. Use that coupon code THESQUADROOM, all one word, to get 10% off your order. Also, folks, I want to remind you, every cop and family member can agree that having your own personal information out there floating around on the internet is a bad idea, and that it only takes one bad actor to change your life forever. After the riots and unrest of the summer of 2020, I began to get increasingly concerned about the fact that so much of my life is out there accessible to the public. I've been trying to figure out where that line should be drawn between what is shared on this podcast, on social media, or in interviews I give, and what should remain private for the security and safety of my family. Even though I'm a public person, that doesn't mean I want my personal information out there for the bad guys to find. I've arrested enough of them in my career that it makes me nervous to think my family could be exposed to those dangers. Not long ago, a suspect showed up at the front door of my partner's house 45 miles away from the station. I've had enough worry, but also I felt completely outmatched by the internet. I mean, it's the internet. Trying to take my name off of Google seemed insurmountable, and I learned that honestly, it is. But there's a lot we can do to protect ourselves, and that's removing our names from people's search sites and breaking the links between our home address and our names. I learned all this from my friends at officerprivacy.com, who are here to help me clean up the internet and the paper trail that is my life. A quick Google search shows a shocking amount of information about where I live, where I used to live, my family members, their names, their addresses, and even phone numbers. We need help protecting ourselves from the bad guys. You have partners on your beat, so get a partner on the internet. Check out officerprivacy.com for more information and learn how you can get started cleaning up the internet. Have you, maybe immediately after leaving, but have you ever missed it or a lot of guys, and especially this is similar with veterans coming out of the military, but a lot of cops, when they retire or they end up in a medical retirement they didn't expect and they're left without a sense of purpose, they really struggle. And I think that's actually, you can extend that into cops that are still on duty, but don't have a department that's leading the way or pointing the direction or have a sense of personal purpose for why they do the job. But, people struggle without a purpose. And it doesn't sound like you ever had that problem as you exited full-time law enforcement, but I'm wondering if I'm wrong.
I am a pretty even-keeled guy. We just laughed about this before in the office, that if you put a monitor on me to measure my blood pressure and heart rate all week, you would be shocked that it would not change at all the whole time. Maybe other than the fact of doing some exercise in the morning. That's how calm, cool, and collected I am. And I'm battle hardened now. I've paid enough of the price, the piper, and I've been to the bottom really hard financially, emotionally, that I think that I'm just much more comfortable understanding there's always a blessing somewhere in disguise. I mean, we had it happen here where an event unfolded where, again, we're in public, we have an attachment to public service. Political games were played. We were being, I guess, criticized with the intention of trying to bring their friends in as the new law enforcement instructors. And it was an embarrassing moment that was based on absolutely no truths. And I say that wholeheartedly. I mean, I'll sit in front of anybody with the people that wanted to try to cast the things they said our way. But at that moment, I said to our staff here, you know what this means? And they go, what? What are we going to do? I said, it means we need to get out of New Jersey, and not depend on the state completely. And that shift was, we did our first out of New Jersey class. And they said, well, how are you going to change the Jersey program to be out of state? I go, look, most of this is universal. So I just got to figure out how I'm going to make the case law that I teach. And it just took some effort. And, when COVID hit, we did really good because we didn't depend on a state that was completely shut down. We were able to be national. So as bad as that moment was, it was actually a pivotal moment in our career, or my career, that pushed me into a whole nother realm, into an uncomfortability, and forced me into something that ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. So I don't see things that happen in my life as as detrimental. I see it as just life, and how you see it is going to dictate how you're going to maneuver through this thing. I told my cousin recently in a phone call, he was complaining about something. I said, listen, this doesn't get easier, right? And by the way, when you take on a company of this size, it really doesn't get easier, but you just learn how to navigate it better. And I think I was probably pretty prepared for that. I had I don't think anybody has a easy story in life except for my kids, but um, I mean, my kids have it so goddamn easy. It's crazy. But, uh, I think that my upbringing, and I'm not going to go into that for this conversation, and the adversities that I faced also made me battle hardened for what molded my brain into what it's able to do today. And that's just be resilient. And that's not a front of me trying to hide behind emotions. I'm just
Mhm.
really, really lucky that I'm not an emotional person. So I don't think that it was as detrimental when I began to start understanding, well, there was probably a reason this occurred. And
Mhm.
now we know today that that could be more true.
Yeah, it definitely seemed, at the beginning of COVID, I actually I remember having the thought about programs like yours, and because I have other friends who teach outside law enforcement, et cetera, and some of them were just absolutely decimated for a couple months until they were able to pivot, and street cops seem to do that very quickly and immediately go to an online presence like that. And it seems like COVID was really the start of an explosive growth for you. Is that correct?
So prior to COVID, well, first off, let me say this. The people that work at this company, the employees here, the instructors, I've
Mhm.
never met better human beings in my life. I've
That's
never met
great.
people who are more dedicated to their profession, the belief of what we're doing. I and when it hit the fan, everybody didn't want to do what they had to do, but we did what we had to do, and it was brutal, man. We didn't have a lot of answers, and we should have been more prepared for it. And I felt like we really hacked our way out of the woods pretty quickly. Um,
Yeah.
you know, Last year, even in a pandemic, and we do big numbers. I'm not gonna, I mean, I would be transparent in an open conversation. Um, we still had 30% growth. So
Wow.
I'm gonna bet, but let me also preamble that by saying we were on path to have about 175% growth. So I'm not complaining. Um, January and February of the beginning of 2020 is when we really started feeling the explosion. I think that maybe you just saw it at the overlap of when COVID started. That's really when it started to happen. We were looking at our numbers and I'm like, holy crap. Like, wow. Like, this is big. Now, with this explosion, we're really going to be able to create this monster machine of getting more out to everybody. We can put more people on the payroll. We can get bigger and better technology, and we can get cops the training they need. Dude, there's nothing better than getting a guy or a girl in the middle of nowhere who are like, we don't have anything. You're what we have.
Right.
So not for you guys. We get no training. So you know, don't get me wrong. I also appreciate what having good fiduciary revenue means for not me only personally, but for the company and for others. So that's also one portion of it too. But it is, I think that's the secret of our success is that that's not real. That's not what drives us at the core. That's just a, that's just a repercussion or an offset. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, um, a, of doing the work that we do with our hearts. But yeah, during that time, we spent a lot of time focusing on brand building, really trying to restructure. And now we're dealing with this as COVID's been resolved in a lot of places of trying to deal with growth issues, which by the way could be very big issues if you don't address them. So every day we're in
Sure.
a panic. We're like, oh my God, we ran out of these. Oh my God, we're out of seats. We need to find a bigger venue. Oh my God, like what do we do here? And I'm like, so it's all day. And what I'm trying to do now is bring on an army of help, which is
Wow.
hard to do as well. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
There's a lot of people out there that either teach at their agency, or they teach locally, or they teach at the academy. But to have the combination of the knowledge and the skill to teach, but then the entrepreneurial spirit to go out there and think, well, I could do this. I'm curious if there was a moment early on, if you remember it, if there was a moment early on where you knew you've got this, you know, like when it went from a concept to maybe a couple of classes to trying to enlist some help to all of a sudden that turn. Where was that turn for you? Do you remember it?
You know, I can tell you that I remember the first time I had a class of 91 people, which was a fluke at the time because I said to myself, "Holy crap, 91 people! I'm going to do this every 3 weeks, right?" And then I thought that was the smart idea. And then a month later, I booked a class, and I had 2 register for the next class, and essentially had to cancel. I couldn't show up, and I didn't even know what I was doing. Um, a moment where I think I got this. Boy, I got to tell you that leap of faith to walk away from real estate and in the short term, even as of now, would have been a bigger gain than I've done here. Um, I think that's when I trusted myself, and I think you learn to trust yourself when you can show that far majority of your decisions that you make are smart ones. People sometimes in entrepreneurship are delusional and think that they're good entrepreneurs, but the bottom line is if your revenue and your books aren't showing growth and you're not showing positive revenue, you're probably not good at it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't get good at it, but there is a discipline involved in that as well, and that's the amount of time I spend consumed in books and podcasts. And even when I eat lunch here, I'm literally watching YouTube on. I can tell you what's up right now. I mean, I was just goofing around. I have something up on the screen. This is. I'm going to pause this for a second. This is 7 best lessons from Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, and other billionaires. And I can tell you, the first 10 minutes, I already learned something and resolved an issue, or an issue that I thought I might have had here. So it's that combined with knowing that I have strengths and weaknesses, and this is probably more one of my strengths. And you want to see my one-on-one weaknesses, you can come to my house and play one-on-one basketball with me. I was just free throwing when we got the hoop installed in my house, and my wife said, "Please don't do this in front of your daughter because I don't want her to see her father look like this." So, I mean, I don't, because of my injury, I can't really play basketball. I learned that in about 14 seconds, just goofing around. But I don't know if so. That pivoting point, I think that was probably it. When we started to see a lot of traction, you're getting the feedback. We're seeing the growth. We're seeing growth that we
Mhm.
couldn't anticipate. I don't know if there's any one moment, but you become convinced.
Mhm.
Series of
You
events. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's like that, or I found that at some point, or there are times when you don't notice it, but then you look back and realize how far something has come, or how much you've learned, or how much you've grown. Um, this idea that we're the same
And by the
person
way, I'm
we
gonna jump
are.
in and just say this. Like, I
Yeah. Yeah.
also it's crazy because I know that it's a big thing. I know that we have a lot of growth, but I don't like sit back on my easy chair and go, "We did it." I feel like it's day one for me every single day. I really do. My wife will commonly say to me, "When does it end?" And the answer is, I don't know if it does. I just don't. This is my favorite thing to do. Um, this is my hobby. I often say, it must look amazing to like really be into Sunday football or to be so excited to go fishing that you make a trip out of it to Costa Rica or golf. And this is what I love to do. And for me, fortunately enough, it pays well. So it's a hobby that returns not only financially but also emotionally. I can't tell you what it feels like to get a message. I had one recently that was really deep. Um, I do. There have been some moments where I've been choked up just reading something that somebody said to me. There's
Yeah.
one. There's one in the last 2 weeks that I was like, "Holy crap!" Like, man, and I just you hear these voices in your head.
Hmm.
My chief said, "Hey, our prosecutor's office, they didn't like the thing that you taught because blah blah blah. Hey, in this area they're saying this, and then I just hear this, and it all just washes away like this testimony of, oh, you know what? We just put up in the Facebook group. I'm sure you're in our Facebook group. The guy who took training and just caught the girl in Wisconsin and
Oh,
caught the
yeah.
girl like 2 weeks later, who was 15. He was 27 or something. And he
Yeah.
had gorilla tape and zip ties in the car, and he stopped that from occurring. That
Yeah.
was, I was like, oh my God. Like, dude, there's a lot of, I pay a lot of dues, right? I'm away from my family a lot. I travel a lot. Unbeknownst to a lot of people, I really friggin' hate flying, but I get on that goddamn plane because I know it's important. And I say to myself on the plane every time, God, please just deliver me to this location. Let me give your soldiers what they need to go out and protect society and keep themselves alive and return to their families. I'll keep showing up here. And the turbulence is a funny little joke you like to play me sometimes, you bastard. But you know, there are moments where I'm emotional, missing my 4 children. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So,
sure. Yeah.
like I pay dues. That everybody, it's not, and I'm not complaining about it. Like it's the bet I've made. I love it, but I there's dues that are paid, man, for sure.
I think we all pay a due in some way, right? I mean, if you're still on the job, you're paying a lot of dues on if you're paying, on night shift and you're away from the
Sure, man.
family, or if you're out of state on something. Your story just now reminded me of one I had, just to kind of commiserate that issue of the positive work you're doing rubbing up against like the old school way. This was a while ago now, but the podcast was probably like 2 or 3 years old, and I was starting to share more and more of my own personal beliefs about leadership and about what it takes to be a good supervisor, and that supervisor and leader are not the same things, as you touched on. And that morning I got an email from a guy in Australia, of all places, who had said, I listened to your show. Thank you so much. I forget the episode, but that episode made me realize that I was suicidal and I needed help. I've since gotten help and I'm on the road to recovery. And like, one of those great messages that makes you feel like what you're doing has some purpose to it outside of yourself. And I
Mhm.
loved it. And I went into work that night, and my boss saw me and pulled me in, and he's like, "Hey, I've been listening to your podcast, and let me tell you why I think you're wrong."
Yeah,
And it was
great.
one of those moments where you're like, I really don't care what you have to say, because I know what effect it's having on people who are out there actually doing the work. Um, and it's that just that story rang in my head as you mentioned your own there.
Ignore the
Um,
noise, do the work, right? Ignore the
right.
noise, do the work. If you throw a stone at every every dog that barks, you'll never find your destination.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's Winston Churchill. I didn't come up with that on a whim. Just so we're clear.
It's excellent person to quote. And to that point, you mentioned the YouTube video that you were watching, and the being able to interact with Gary Vee, which must have been incredible itself.
Quite a few times,
But
actually.
and then also your friend Frank, who you reached out to, and these other people in your life that you've been able to call upon. And it sounds like you understand the importance of mentors and coaches. And I'm curious how, if someone came up to you and asked you, Dennis, how do I, as a street cop, how do I develop mentor relationships? What coaches do I need? What are the gaps that I need to fill in my life? What's your recommendation for them? And then after that, I'm curious what kind of coaches you pursue right now.
Okay, so the answer is, if you don't have somebody that acts, or you're attracted to the way that they behave or the work that they do at your agency, great news. There's street cop training. There's plenty of us on here that can be your big brother, your big sister. And we have the time in the field, almost 20 years in the books in this game. Um, and we'll give you the answers that you seek. And we don't say that with audacity. We say with humility of, we've done what you did. We've faced adversity. A guy recently reached out to me and said, hey, just so you know, I have an internal going on. I'm going to remove myself from the group because I don't know if they're going to terminate me or not. And you and I both know that, being in this game long enough, if you are being hunted and you're in a state that offers no protections, they're going to get you. And you might get terminated on some trumped up charges, which are unfair. And we know that's very true.
Yeah.
Uh, and I said to the guy something along the lines of, just so you know, I've had internals just like that as well. And, you know, look where I'm at now. So don't view it as the worst thing that ever happened to you, and just know that life is beautiful and life goes on. And everything's a blessing in disguise. It's hard to tell. I mean, even when my ex-girlfriend broke up with me, it was devastating. And I hadn't had girlfriends my whole 20s. I had quite the reputation of being somebody who was I don't know what you want to call it, but somebody who floated around with a martini glass and a top hat. We'll leave it at that. And, 5 weeks later, I met my wife, right? So like, there's all these things in life that happen and occur. But back to what we were talking about, the mentorship you're looking for can be found in our group. And we hold a lot of pride in behaving properly. We had a guy who wanted to be an instructor for our company and misbehaved towards newer people. And I had to say to him, like, hey, you can't be an instructor at this company. Don't forget, you're on the job. They're coming to you for help. And you're laughing at a simple, basic question because it's infantile to you, but you didn't know all this shit when you came out of the academy. So what do you, who do you think you are to talk to a kid like this who's coming here asking for help? And you're going to take an opportunity to take advantage of that and make yourself, your insecure behavior, make him look small and you look big. It's not what we stand for here. We are your big brother. We are the person that you need in your life, and we will always be that way at the very core. Now, mentors for me, it's very interesting. As soon as you said that, I watched a video with Robert Kiyosaki. Are you familiar with who that is?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Kiyosaki, if people who are listening have never heard of him before, wrote a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and there's a trilogy of these. I don't know the trilogies. There's a library of these books and spinoffs from it, and he was interviewed recently. I happened to just catch something. I just kind of peruse YouTube and say, that sounds interesting. I'll click that and watch that. And he said, colleges are interesting because you can find more valuable, information on YouTube now. So if I had to give you a list of names of the podcasts that I listen to, they're businessy, right? But they're also very thoughtful and it's very attractive to me to hear how these people are living and how they see things. And they've had to figure it out or listen from other people. Doesn't mean that it might serve you the same way, but I think that mentorship for me boils down to those who we see and are the most successful people in their realms. And it could be anybody from, I'm not even a sports guy, but I'm attracted to somebody who is a athlete who faced adversity and toughed it out. Michael Jordan was, and I don't know anything about the guy. As a kid, but I'm not like a sports guy. But to hear his story, to hear what he was about, and then go to switch it all the way over to, business side of things, and Warren Buffett and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Gary Vaynerchuk and Ed Milet and Andy Frisella. These people have been to the mountain top. You know what I mean? They can come back and tell you what it takes, what it is, what it's going to be. And if you're the right person, if you found the right mentor, which I've fortunate enough to Grant Cardone, I throw one in there as well. Those are mentors that were specifically for me. It might not sound the same. Actually, matter of fact, Gary Vaynerchuk is my wife's cousin's, one of his like 3 childhood friends. And it was crazy when I started listening to him. I'm like, man, I wonder if Marissa knows Gary. Because I just had heard he was from Edison, New Jersey, and we're from Woodbridge, next town over. And I said, Court, send me, I think I had Marissa's number. I called Marissa. I go, Marissa, you know Gary Vaynerchuk? She's like, yeah, he's one of my best friends. And I'm like, come on. So I said to her on Christmas one time, she's like, I just was texting Gary on the phone. I'm like, oh, I hate you. I said, have you listened to his stuff? And she goes, I don't. And I said, really? Why? She goes, I'm not in business.
Yeah.
And he goes beyond that as well. But just because he's a mentor for me doesn't mean he's the right mentor for everybody else. One thing I could give everybody is have an open mind when you're trying to find something. As far as mentorship or some answers, or if you're into a book, don't just shut it out. I always tell people, when I give you a podcast to listen to 5 episodes, right? Just get through 5. If you're in a book and you've heard it was good, and at chapter 2 you're annoyed and you don't think it's for you, go, because chapter 6 is going to be that golden nugget you were looking for, and it's just worth the time and the effort. So, mentorship, most of us have to go beyond of what we're afforded to. In our family or close proximity of friendship, it's probably pretty rare for somebody to have somebody in their life that they can really rely on for good advice. I always tell people this. I go, 99% of the things people told me were absolutely useless. And I can't even remember what the other 1% was, but I'm sure there was a couple things in there that probably made sense. So I listen to people that I think offer the advice that I need to hear and are examples of what I'm trying to become.
I really like that. Oftentimes with the word mentor or coach, there's an assumption that there's a personal relationship there or that it's in person. And, Gary, you are an outlier to the ability to have a connection to Gary Vee like that. But these others that you mentioned, um, we all have access to them. And we kind of need to take the blinders off to these resources that are now out there, thanks to social media and podcasts and uh, ebooks and that sort of stuff that are out there, because there is so much. Whatever you want to learn, whatever advice you want to get, there's someone out there who's got it and who's got the credentials to share it. We don't have to look just within our immediate sphere of people that we can literally reach out and touch.
That's right. Tim Ferriss actually said on a podcast, and I'm going to give one big shout out right after this to another big mentor of mine who I don't even know, but who was nice enough to send me autographed books when I emailed him a very thoughtful email. Um, uh, Tim, the guy that wrote Tim Ferriss. I'm sorry, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss, who wrote Tools of Titans, who
Yeah.
wrote books the 4 hour
4 hour
work week,
body, 4 hour work
right?
week. Yeah.
All that stuff. So he said, I've told people that you're an average of the 5 people you hang out with. And a man responded to him, but I don't have 5 friends. He goes, you have podcasts. You just have to listen. They're your
Mhm.
friends. It's like a conversation with these high winners every single day. And
Sure.
that's how you see your life. Your life can become anything you want. And I never thought I'd be saying a guy saying things like, be a guy saying things like this. But I also want to give a huge shout out to Seth Godin. I mean, what
Oh
a
yeah.
impact in my life. By far my favorite author. Uh, I think Seth Godin, and a lot of people don't get him because his thoughtfulness is way beyond surface level stuff. And this dude, they call him the Godfather of marketing, but he's beyond that too. And the guy is outrageous and a gem of a human being, a polite, humble, kind-hearted guy, and very fortunate to at least volley a few conversations back and forth with him. Not that it had much meat to it, but it meant the world to me. And by the way, because it meant the world to me, I remind myself of maybe some people see me as Seth Godin. Maybe
Mhm.
more people will see me as somebody like that. So it's important that I, you know, quadruple down on the humility and make sure I take as much time as I can to try to email and respond back to all the messages. But dude, it's becoming daunting at this point. I mean, I'm getting 30, 40 messages a day and
Mhm.
running a company. And I have 190 emails and I just checked them 4 days ago. So,
Right.
and like the people are writing real thoughtful things. What am I going to do? Push, like lift my nose to them. I don't have time to that. I know it means a lot for me to get back to people. I know it means a lot when somebody sees me and I recognize that they recognize me, and I take some time to walk over and shake their hand and say, you look familiar, pleasure to meet you, and oh my god, and they're cops, dude. I'm not saying I'm the most well known guy in the world, but police officers who may offend themselves in. I'm going to read something to you, and I think you're going to like this. And I'm
Please.
just
Yeah.
going to pull it up on my. You're going to. This is. It's a little bit of a spoiler for my class, but I'm going to read you the last excerpt from my class, and I don't know what more I needed to validate my behavior and the sacrifices that I've made and the selflessness that I like to achieve. Let me pull this up. I'm just looking for. It's the most important thing that I've actually ever received personally. Let's see what I get. Part 2. We're good. I'm just pulling it up on my computer, and I'm just going to read it to you. It's the last slide because it's how I finished the program. And I go through a lot of things in the program. On the end of my program, we go into the purpose, the point. Here's examples, the things that this training has led to. But this is the biggest one, and it's a conversation that's volleyed. It says at the end, "Awesome. I'm 100% committed to bringing you back down here. I just got promoted to sergeant in January, by the way, and I owe a great deal of that to taking your class. I debated whether or not it would be weird to tell you this part, but it came to your class in 2018, and I was in the middle of the deepest depression of my life. I used to drive to work and hope someone would kill me because I didn't want to be alive anymore and didn't want to kill myself and leave my family like that. Your class gave me a new sense of purpose on the job and allowed me to focus on developing my career and growing as a cop and a person. I'm in a much better place now. I'm married and in a good spot at work and life. I don't mean to sound corny, but I really appreciate you and what you're doing. You don't always know the impact you're having on people, but never forget it's there." Um, I don't know if I can read that without emotion. And
Sure.
I had 2 people since I started reading that not too long ago walk up to me in class and tell me that I've helped them with the same thing. So a lot of sacrifice, I think, balled up into coming out of my person every time I read that because, dude, I've paid a lot of dues. I mean, I have paid a lot of dues. I promise you that. It has not been all peaches and cream. And on the other end of it, it has been a very wonderful and rewarding experience. And the admiration that I get in return is it's priceless, dude. You know, I don't even care what my naysayers 8 years ago would say, or 7, or the animosity there may be at my previous employer. I don't care what they think. I don't care what people say. I ignore the noise and do the work.
You know, when we title an episode like this, like what I've learned, that that right there, that is where we have to end it.
I thought it would
Ignore
be
the no-
that way. Yeah.
ignore the noise and do the work, right?
Yeah.
Dennis, you're certainly doing great things for law enforcement all around the country and really all around the world, teaching a lot of different ideas. You're teaching leadership strategies in criminal interdiction and a long list of classes. But where can people go to learn more about you if they don't already know about you?
Streetcop.com, streetcoptraining.com. They both go to the same place. You can find us on Facebook at our Facebook group for law enforcement only. Just answer the questions. We'll get to you. We have a team of people vetting through it because it's a police only group. We have actually today, I think we just literally today before I got on this, we clicked right over 75,000 members. Those are cops vetted.
Wow.
Instagram, we have a public one. We also have a private one if you prefer to be on Instagram. We're really trying to expand on all platforms. We have a Street Cop Training podcast.
Yes.
And, check the calendar because we will be near you. And if you're within a driving distance and you want to take our training, we just can't be everywhere in the United States. So if we're within a driving distance to you and you can make it, it's your best bet. It'll be life-changing. We don't ask for a big VIG to get into the program. I always found it interesting that people would spend $94,000 on a college degree that basically is useless, but will become very frugal when it comes to a 1-day or 2-day course that would alter the path of your career and give you 25 times more value. We say that because we believe it, and that's the feedback that we get. Our classes sell out everywhere. And if you wait and you drag your feet on it, and we are close to you, this is not a push. We have a class going on in Ohio from this point on right now. Next week, we now have a backup list, and we have a huge venue during the pandemic. We're fitting 150 in a venue, and that's the max. I mean, we're busting at the seams with the separation for 6 foot rules, and that we have a 14-person waiting list, and people are begging. I'm like, look, you can't drag your feet on this stuff, but we'll be back. And by the way, when you sent me an email or a message and asked me to be on your podcast, I was extremely humbled, and I couldn't be more thankful that you invited me on here. It means the world to me. I admire what you do as well, and I appreciate you recognizing the efforts and the work that we're putting into it. And it's not just me. It's not just who I am. It's the people that I've surrounded myself with, the phenomenal instructors here at this company and the staff at Street Cop Training, who are making it is what it is today. And essentially getting cops the training they need to survive and put bad people in jail.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. You do have your own excellent podcast, Street Cop Podcast. I've really enjoyed you're relatively new still, but we got like 10 or 12 episodes, I think. And as we record this today, and really enjoy the conversations you have. They're very open. I just posted about this yesterday. They're very optimistic, right? Like optimism isn't just blind naivete that everything is great, but it's a belief that it can be better and that we can do better if we put in the work. And that comes through in all the stuff you put out on socials. It comes through in the Facebook group that is the most polite and well-mannered cop Facebook group I've ever seen because people are in there to really care and help. And it's just fantastic. I'm really happy to know that there's someone like you out there who has this flag and they've planted it in the ground, and they're making space for other cops to get safer, to get better at their jobs, to get healthier and feel like there's more purpose in their life. So Dennis, thank you for what you do. And thank you for your time with us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for listening to this episode with Dennis Benino of Street Cop Training. To learn more about what they're doing, head over to streetcoptraining.com or follow them on Instagram. Their fantastic Instagram page at Street Cop Training, or join the Facebook group where there's some really quality, good discussions going on about professionalism and how to go about your job in a really dynamic and fun way, but to do it the right way. If you want to know how you can support the show, there's a few ways you can do that. If you like what you heard today and you got something out of this conversation, please consider leaving a review on the podcast player of your choice. Please also leave a comment with your review. It really helps us make the show better. Second, share this episode or any other episode you love with the people you hold dear to you. They can be partners, friends, family members. You can share episodes right from our webpage at thesquadroom.net and from most podcast players. Also, there's some great companies that support this show and the podcast, so support them as well. Go to thesquadroom.net/support to see exclusive deals from Com Gear Supply, Signature Coins, Hard to Kill Fitness, Onnit, Ranger Up, Hardhead Veterans, and Audible. And also want to thank our sponsors of this episode, comgearsupply.com. Check them out and use that coupon code TheSquadroom for 10% off your order. And also go over to officerprivacy.com to learn more about what you can do, and you get to download their free ebook, which gives you 15 action items to immediately start making yourself safer, making your family safer. And you can download that directly from their website at officerprivacy.com. And don't forget to join our Facebook group and follow me on Instagram at The Squad Room. And real quick, if you're looking for a ballistic helmet that exceeds NIJ standards and won't break the bank, please check out our friends hardheadveterans.com and use the coupon code SQUADROOM to get $20 off your helmet. I love their helmets. It's been in my war bag for years. Hardhead Veterans does great things for cops, so check them out if you're looking for a ballistic helmet, and use that coupon code SQUADROOM to get $20 off your order. All right, until next time, take care of each other and stay safe.